Today, we'll be talking about early intervention for children with Down syndrome with our very eminent speaker, Tejal Shah. Thank you so much, Tejal, for joining us. But before I talk a little bit more about you, let me tell you all a little bit about Eblity. So, what is Eblity? Eblity as an organization for us, you all are at the center of our universe. And when I say you all, I mean all the caregivers of children with special needs, including parents, special educators, therapists, and everyone else who is making consistent efforts in making the lives of special children easy. And what we are driven by is the mission of making things easier for you. And one way that we have managed to do it by far is through technology. But while we believe that technology could help a lot, we also understand that without the caregivers, without the carers, technology is insufficient. Every child wants to thrive, and every child should be given the opportunity to thrive. And every caregiver should be given the support to enable a child to thrive. That is, no one should have to do this alone. And therefore, we at Eblity, we bring to you a community along with other resources to enable the best chance of discovering the child's true potential. So that was about Eblity. Amongst the many things that we are trying to help you with, this webinar series is definitely one of them. And we hope that you take away something valuable from today's webinar. And now coming to our speaker for the day, Miss Tejal Shah. She is the founder of the Bangalore Humsafar group. It is a parent support group for persons with Down syndrome. She is an Excellence Award winner for the cause of Down syndrome and also a proud parent of a child. She's a special educator, multifaceted special educator, I would rather say, and the co founder of the first certificate course on Down syndrome for parents, students, and professionals in association with the Down Syndrome Federation of India. Thank you so much, Tejal, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Swati.
Yeah, so I am very sure that all our listeners are very eager to listen to you. But before I jump onto that, I would like to know from you, how did your journey as a special educator as someone in this community begin? If you could tell us something about that.
Sure. First of all, a very good evening to everybody. I really thank from the bottom of my heart ability to take this month, the October Awareness Month, to spread as much awareness about Down syndrome. So, great appreciation for your efforts. It's an absolute honor and privilege for me to speak on this platform and speak on such an important topic, which is early intervention for children with Down syndrome. So before I take you through the presentation, I would like to share my journey as Swati has asked me. So November 9th, 2013 was the happiest day of my life because my daughter, Kushi, was born, um, and it was the best feeling, I must say. It was only after 21 days which I came to know about her diagnosis, that she had Down syndrome, and that definitely tore us apart. But so as usual, like as each parent does, I browsed the internet, I Googled a lot, I met a lot of parents, I researched, I read a lot about Down syndrome. And then finally, my life changed when Kushi was 2 months, because at that day, when she was 2 months, I met Dr. Rekha Ramachandran, who is the president of the Down Syndrome Federation of India. And she's my special friend and a true godmother, I would say. It's only because of her I'm here today speaking in front of you. She has empowered me, and not only me, thousands of parents all across the world, I would say. She is a pillar of strength to all of us. Yeah, so my journey as a special educator began uh, when Khushi was 3.5 years old. So I studied when she was around 2 years old. And before that, my profession was completely different. I was into, I was running a boutique and I was into designing. Uh, it was only after my daughter's diagnosis, I really wanted to understand the condition more and be a strong support to her. That's how I wanted to really understand the situation in depth. That is how I learned about it, and I completely fell in love with the subject. And that's how I took this profession as a full-time service to this community. And after
That's
that, there has not been a better satisfying moment than working for this community. Trust me, this is the most satisfying work which I feel I'm really blessed with.
That is
Okay, so
so
that's my
inspiring, Tejal. I'm pretty sure a lot of parents here and everyone who's attending is drawing some inspiration from you. So, without further ado, I would request you to begin with your talk. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to hear you today.
thank you, Swati. We'll start off with the presentation.
Yeah,
So before we start, as we all know that one child out of 700 children, the regular children, are born with Down syndrome every year, and around 30,000 children are born with Down syndrome in India, and around 6,000 in the US every year. So what is Down syndrome? It is it is not a disease. We don't catch it from anybody. It is a genetic condition. So there are three types of Down syndrome. Before we go into that, I want to tell you as to what is Down syndrome. So normally we all have 46 chromosomes in our bodies, right? All typical bodies have 46 chromosomes. What happens with people with Down syndrome is they have one extra chromosome. That one extra chromosome, affects the entire lifestyle of the person with Down syndrome, be it medical, be it, uh, you know, uh, so it basically is medical, and that I will talk to you further in the next slides. So before we go ahead with the uh, medical interventions, let us talk about what are the three types of Down syndrome. So the most commonest condition in Down syndrome is trisomy 21, which affects about 94% of children, which you can read here. And in this, what happens is every cell of the body is affected. Of a child with trisomy 21, every cell is affected with that extra chromosome. Whereas in mosaic, what happens, which is only around 2% of children with Down syndrome are affected, it's only around, few cells are affected in the body. And whereas in translocation, it affects just around two chromosomes. So sometimes it also passes, we can't, in translocation, we don't see the features also sometimes. So because it's really mild, and the 21st chromosome generally gets attached to another chromosome, which is either 14th mostly or number 9th chromosome. So what exactly the chromosomes look like? Can I see the next slide? Swati, can I see the next slide, please? Yeah, so this is the general report which comes when you actually call out for, when your child is diagnosed with Down syndrome. This is the first report which you should get it done. That is called the chirotyping. And this shows the chromosomal alterations in Down syndrome, wherein you can see the number 21, the 21st chromosome has 3 pairs. So that is how the child is diagnosed, it confirms that in the report that the child has trisomy 21. So that extra chromosome affects all the chromosomes in the body. So yeah, can we have the next slide, please? So what should be done once a child is born with Down syndrome? As I already mentioned, the first step is karyotyping to confirm as to what exactly is the diagnosis, whether it is trisomy 21, whether it is mosaic or translocation. Through that, we can figure it out. The next and the most important is family counseling, because, as all the parents definitely go through a initial, rough phase, because, they're all very emotional, and definitely there is a condition which comes with health issues. That is the only thing. Otherwise, everything else can be managed. But uh, health is what we actually want to really, make sure that it is fine. So through family counseling, we can actually, give confidence to the parents that, with proper intervention for the children, it is definitely a better future for the children. So that we need to follow the medical checklist, which is also extremely important. Can we show the medical checklist, Swati? Yeah, so this has age-wise, age-wise information as to what needs to be checked at what particular age, right from the birth to the adulthood. We can actually see as to what all needs to be checked for the child with Down syndrome. Yeah, can we go back? The formal course on Down syndrome by DSFI. I would highly recommend this course for anybody who is interested to learn about Down syndrome in detail, as well as all the parents who have children with Down syndrome. This is for you. Can we have the flyer of the formal course, Swati, please? I think the next slide. The next slide.
I think, Tejal, we had put it at the end of the slide deck. So maybe you could talk about it at the end.
Okay, great. So yeah, I can just give a brief. So this particular course is basically, it is for anybody. As I mentioned, it is mainly for parents as well as medical practitioners, and who all are associated, in helping and supporting people with this condition. And the beauty of this course is we have all the medical experts in this particular course who actually come and train all our participants. We have all the experts from the medical field who are related to the condition, as well as we have therapists, we have inclusive school teachers who talk about inclusion. We also have self-advocates, and also we have senior parents who talk about their journey and challenges and how exactly they achieved, the goals for their children. So it is a complete package, and you should not be missing it if at all you are deeply interested in the cause. So, and the next is definitely early intervention, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and education. So physiotherapy, occupational therapy, and speech therapy are the early intervention things which are really which needs to be done during the early years. The first is physiotherapy, because generally our children have hypotonia. So physiotherapy is a must. And the next is educational tools, which is also one of the most important early intervention tool for our children, because as we all know that our children are visual learners, and this toolkit it's basically very visual and recommended by the Down Syndrome Federation of India as a very important resource for every child with Down syndrome during the early years of their childhood. And the last but not the least is to join the Down syndrome parent support group, because parent, how a parent will connect to another parent is a different feeling altogether, right? That can be handled really well. And talk to parents continuously about the progress of their child with the issues. So in India, we have the best parent support group. I run one in Bangalore, which is called the Bangalore Humsafar. Then we have, in every state we have a parent support group in India, and we are just a call away. We are always there to support all the parents whenever they need. Can we have the next slide? So these are the typical features of children with Down syndrome. These are the features which I mentioned: underdeveloped nose, small growth, waddled gait, difficulty in running, sparse straight hair, underdeveloped jaws, flattened upper lip, oftentimes short-sightedness or crossed eyes, floppy ragdoll look. So what happens is it's generally, this is the most commonest features which we have observed. Sometimes they might not have any of these at all. So, there are few which may be there and few might not at all be there. I'm just trying to show you the most common features so that you're aware for your knowledge. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. So they have, as I already mentioned, they have decreased muscle tone at birth. They have a little excess skin at the nape of the neck, flattened nose, small ears, small mouth. So you can see how they generally look. So we can actually figure out during the birth, looking at the features, immediately the doctor should be able to identify if they are aware about this. So single crease in the palm. Yeah. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, these are the symptoms. So dental problems are generally ignored, but they're really serious, if they're identified at the early age, they can be treated very well and really fast. So that is what we should be not ignoring the dental issues at all. And short ears and short, thick hands, these are like the general features. And heart defects are also there for 60% of person with Down syndrome, so which can be treated. Now there is enough medical support, and so that's how early intervention and medical checkups on a regular basis is very important, so that we can get rid of all these difficulties which we have during the early years, and we can reduce the gap which our children have. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, so these are the features. You can see, yeah. Can we have the next slide? So there are some myths I wanted to clarify. I generally get these questions from new parents. So people with Down syndrome don't live long. Well, we've come a long way. So from 9 years in 1929, now the average age is 60 years, and many times much more than that. In fact, I've met a lady who is above 70 years and she's healthy and hearty and doing work. So, and very independent. So it's all medical, how well the medical is taken care of. So many people actually live much more longer because the medical intervention has been really good. Yeah, can we have the next slide, please? Is Down syndrome contagious? I mentioned just in the beginning that we cannot catch it. It is not a disease. It is just a condition, right? It is a genetic condition and it takes place at the time of conception. Yeah, can we have the next slide? Are people with Down syndrome at an increased risk for certain medical conditions? Can we have the next slide? Yes. So they have many issues, but not all of them. With the disclaimer I would like to put, we should be aware that these issues may come at different points of time at different ages, but it might not come at all. So, but we should always be alert, and that's how we should keep checking the medical every 6 months. So they might have congenital heart defect, thyroid, respiratory issues, hearing, vision, gastrointestinal and digestive problems, low muscle tone because they're generally hypotonic, sleep apnea, Alzheimer's, that is towards the later age. So many of these conditions, as I said, are treatable, and most people with Down syndrome definitely live very healthy lives. Yeah. Can we have the next slide, please? Is there a cure for Down syndrome? Well, there are a lot of people who claim that there is a cure, and there are still running centers. But the fact is, there is no cure. The extra chromosome will definitely be there throughout the life. And as I said, if we focus on the early intervention and a good quality of, proper health care, and great educational opportunities, appropriate diet, and of course, a holistic approach for the development of a person with Down syndrome, that will definitely make a huge difference in the individual's life. Yeah. How realistic is inclusion for a person with Down syndrome? Well, I took a slight pause because we definitely have done a lot of work in India as of now. We have come far ahead, but still, I would say we still have a long way to go. Inclusion is still a challenge for people with Down syndrome. Very few schools are accepting our children, as the awareness is very little. So, as and when we spread more and more awareness through these webinars and interactions and training programs, we see, the inclusion gets better, and we want to do it as much as possible. And we definitely see a better future for our children. Yeah, can we just have a next slide? What are the strengths and weaknesses of person with Down syndrome? Yes. Swati, can we have the, yeah, sure. So the strengths are a distinct preference for visual learning. So yes, most of our children are great visual learners. The visual processing is much faster as compared to the auditory processing. They are highly empathetic. The receptive language, the understanding is much higher than the expressive language. They are very, very social, and they have unconditional love, and they have a strong visual short-term memory. And the challenges which we have noticed, which are very common, are hearing. Speech is there. Mostly the speech is there. It's only the clarity we need to work from the early years, and that also is much better if we do the early intervention properly. There is a low muscle tone, weak auditory memory, as I mentioned, short attention span and distractibility, and sequential difficulties. So, these are all interrelated to health again. So if there is a thyroid issue, if there is a sleep, obstructive sleep issue, we will see this, attention span, distractibility, the hearing, if it is not proper. So definitely the child is not going to respond in the class. So if we manage all that properly, so then we can always help the child better. Can we change the next slide, please? Use this language. So this preferred language guide. This is a very important slide because, I have come across a lot of journalists who do write a lot of good articles about our children, but sometimes, they do mention that the child is suffering with Down syndrome, but they're actually not. They never suffer with Down syndrome. They are actually very happy in their space. It's just a condition. Let's not say it is a suffering. And we actually prefer that the words like retarded, are not used because it's actually illegal now. And they're really hurt, if such words are used. So let's respect that. And they are actually people first. We never call Down syndrome child. We always call children with Down syndrome, an adult with Down syndrome, an individual with Down syndrome. Let's respect them. Yeah. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is very important for parents who have really young children. Generally, you generally think that you might be missing out something. So this is an easy checklist for you. If your child is below 1 year, you should just follow this, and you will be covering almost everything, and that will be a great intervention for your child. So physiotherapy, as I said, it is a must from the early months. I started at 2 months for my child. I know some parents have started at 1 month, but of course, if there is a heart difficulty, if there is a health condition, we need to wait for that. Health comes first, right? We need to get that sorted a little bit, and after that we start with the therapy, but we don't miss out on it. So physiotherapy is very important. Complete health checkup, as I mentioned already, every 6 months. Different textures, because some of our children do have sensory issues. So if we introduce them to different textures from the early age, if we give that exposure to them, the sensory issues reduce to a large extent over a period of time. Regular body massage, face massage really help, for the blood circulation, as we all know, as well as for the brain stimulation. And the face massage is because there's, because of the hypotonia, the oromotors are also weaker. So we need to do those massages. And these massages are recommended by the speech therapist also. Build on emotional responsiveness, encourage social communication, looking, smiling, and gestures. So you have to really encourage the child and, show the smile, and, how exactly, whatever the milestone he needs to reach at that point of time, you need to give them reinforcements for that. Orosensory motor intervention, which is so important because generally the tongue comes out and there is a low muscle tone on the face, and later on it develops on speech clarity issues. So if the orosensory motor intervention is taken care of from the beginning, and this can start as early as the child is born, right? By 3 months also, you can just take opinion. I mean, you don't have to go to the therapist. You can just take opinion and do what the therapist advises at home. Most of the suggestions are doing at home. The parent should do at home. We just take opinions and guidance from the therapist and incorporate that at home. Baby sensory programs, again, it is so beautiful that, these programs are generally in a group of, a lot of children together, a lot of babies together. So, and they have a lot of activities according to their age for sensorial activities, which activates a lot of which activates the sense organs of the child at a very early age, which really helps at a later age also. So we should expose them to baby sensory programs. Introduce swimming. That is the best and the only sport which actually can be introduced below 1 year. So if you don't have any other health conditions and hearing issues are not there, I would highly recommend that swimming should be encouraged at a very at a very early age. Just introduction, the feel of the water, just taking the child and making the child comfortable. That is so important. On a later stage, you will see that swimming is the best for attaining clarity of speech also for the child, because that really helps in strengthening the muscle tone of the child, right? So overall muscle tone becomes stronger, and that is how swimming is very helpful. A lot of park time is advised because it's actually a lot of activity happening in the park and a lot of stimulation for the brain. So the family time is definitely very important because the child needs to see where he is, and how the other, as many people he sees, as many people and children he meets, the more he learns. So the family is the best therapist. And traveling, definitely, because every place has a different climate, and that gives a lot of stimulation to the brain. So traveling is highly recommended for such young children from a young age. It cannot be, it is not necessarily going to a different country altogether. You can just go to a village which is close to your house, maybe just a half an hour, 45 minutes drive. But you should do it regularly for the child to experience different atmospheres, because that's a great way of stimulation. Yeah, can we have the next slide, please? So 1 to 2 years, what all I have mentioned in 0 to 1 years can be continued, as well as the additionals are like we add the occupational therapy. Now, like I said, we just take opinions and we try to do as much as home. The speech therapy also. Uh, and the talk tools are extremely important, I would say, because they generally take care of the oromotor. We have in talk tools, what I mean is, they have a set of, they have like blowing, they have like chewy tubes, they have whistles, they have a complete set in the talk tools, which is graded and age specific. And it is, according to the development of the child, it is recommended. But that is recommended only under the guidance of speech therapists. Mother toddler program, which is similar to the baby sensory program. So that is for the toddlers now. And of course, music is the best way of best therapy for all children. So music-based programs are very stimulating. Introducing touch field books, sound books, and pop-up books. Why I say that? So that later, the children develop the reading habit faster. They start loving books. So if we expose them to these kind of books, very colorful and vibrant books, they start loving books at a later stage. So you see, the introduction is so important. So introduce play school for 30 to 60 minutes so that, the child interacts with the other children, because having, the child therapy is the best therapy, right? When the child interacts with another child, looks at the other child, he automatically learns a lot more than what an adult can teach. So that is highly recommended. Regular body massage, face massages, I already spoke about, or exploratory play. So, just don't keep instructing the child all the time. Let the child explore, let him play, let him figure out himself as to, any toys, let him just open it up and let him tear it and throw it, because they want to explore, they want to touch, let them put in the mouth and see. Of course, you have to be careful, they don't swallow it, but let them feel it. And they want to, why do they throw it? They want to hear what kind of sound they make it. We generally have complaints of parents saying, oh, my child is throwing so many toys, but actually they want to understand what is the reaction. They are learning from play. So let them explore as much as is possible, because that is the age to explore. So continue swimming, introduce toilet training. So once your child starts sitting, I would recommend that, the toilet training can start. You just need to maintain a proper routine every 1 hour, every 2 hours. You have to just make it a habit, and you have to just introduce toilet training. Part-time, family time, and traveling continues, as I mentioned, from 0 to 1 years. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, introduce educational tools. Now, this is very important. I already mentioned this during the previous slide also, that educational toolkit is the most important resource for the overall development of any child with Down syndrome. So which is recommended by the Down Syndrome Federation of India. And we started too, because it is very visual and the eyesight is completely developed, because generally it is delayed for children with Down syndrome. So we generally say, start working on the academics as well as all the other areas only after 2 years. So that is how we introduce the educational toolkit at 2 years. Yeah, so, and introduce, so can we just show the toolkit, Swati? Do we have it in the next slide? Yeah, so as I mentioned, it is featured. So if you want to have more details, it is there in the website also in the important resource column. And these are the toolkit names, the emotional tools, the sensory tools, their visual scheduler, which actually, gives gives a routine for the child and reduces the anxiety of the child. And there are safety cards because generally our children are not aware of the safety rules. So, and there are perception tool because as our children are visual learners, this perception tool is really beneficial to teach them visual association skills, visual discrimination skills, so recognition skills. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah, the math language booklet lays actually the foundation of mathematics later on. So this is also very important. These have the concepts of mathematics, which is so important before we actually understand numeracy. Then these are some of the games, Housey game, the Fruity Veggie game, the reading tool, the sensory tool. Can we have the next slide? Behavior tool. So generally what happens is our children are not aware about the right behavior. It's not that they don't understand behavior. They just don't know. So if we prepare them in advance that, this is what is expected out of you, they perform much better. So this tool has all visuals wherein different situations and different good habits and bad habits are mentioned. And then the child learns faster and the behavior is much better. Story tools. So generally, we get books which have a lot of text and it's a little difficult initially for the child to understand the story. So what we have done in this story tool is made a very, very comprehensive tool on stories, wherein we have just 4 pictures in one particular story and very little text for the child to be interested in learning about a story. Because there is very little text and beautiful visuals. So the child is interested to see what the story is all about. And it is very, very, very short. So we can actually, train them better during the initial level. So first what we recommend is, first we start with this story tools and then we start with the regular storybook. So the transition is much easier. The next is the calendar tool. So a lot of our children face difficulties in practicing, the today, tomorrow, and yesterday concept, right? So then this calendar tool takes care of, making them understand these particular concepts. The next is CVC word tool. That's again one of the reading tools. Occupation games teaches them, different professions. Yeah, so I think that's about the educational toolkit. This is 3 to 5 years. Yeah, so this age group is very crucial, and this is the time we introduce pretend play for to and imaginative play, cognitive play. We actually introduce different sports to the children because we've done a lot of physiotherapy and the child is mostly walking and running also most of the time. So we actually introduce sports. Whatever sport we should actually go for gymnastics and badminton, all of that. You can actually expose and see the regular bat and ball, any sport, the football. Rather than just continuing with the physiotherapy, if you introduce sports, that takes care of, the practice goes on. So the physiotherapy is not required, and the sports is what takes over. Play partners. So play partners play a very important role. So we try to have, try to see that they have typical children playing with them, and because they look and learn faster. They look at the other children and they learn faster. So that's how an inclusive environment is the best for children with Down syndrome, because they really learn very well when they are with the typical children. They learn faster. There is a research also which says, and it is actually proven that, they do much better if they are in an inclusive school than the special school. Because in special school, they are not pretty challenged. They don't see any challenge to do better. Whereas in an inclusive schools, they see much better children performing much better than them. So they actually want to be like them. So they try to perform much better. So that's about it. And group play, turn-taking games, visual scheduler, I already mentioned. Age-appropriate behavior is a must. We should not be just treating them as a 1 year or a 2 year. We should teach them, because if we want to send them to school, we need to teach them appropriate behavior, right? So that should be incorporated. And practice and repetition is the key for them. And as I already mentioned, inclusive environment is the best. So can we have the next slide? Yes, and as I said, if you have introduced them with the pop books, the sound books, and the touch and feel books, definitely the child will be ready to read books. So you have to start introducing with very smaller books and very colorful and very little text, those books to these children, and they will slowly love reading. Coloring, tracing, writing. So there is a gap of, 3 to 5 I have mentioned. So you have to really see, if the development has happened, only then you introduce writing. If the fine motors are not there, the gross motor skill is not yet developed, you cannot introduce writing, right? Because there'll be no strength. So it's not like, so then again, you will have to wait for some time. You'll have to work on the gross motor. You'll have to work on the fine motors, and only then you can start with writing, right? So I'm assuming that the intervention is done from 0 to 3 years, and that is how I have mentioned writing in between 3 to 5 years. So if the intervention is not done in the early years, and this child is still struggling, we cannot introduce tracing or writing. And always follow the child's lead. As I said, always give options, let the child explore, see what the child's interest is. Don't give your interest, don't put your interest on your child. See what the child likes and follow his lead, and give him opportunities to according to his taste. Allow freedom to explore, give choices, as I said, encourage self-help skills, which is so important. Involve them in daily activities. Whatever you're doing at home, taking out vegetables, washing vegetables, just putting the clothes in the, washing machine, all these, life skills are so important, for them to actually gain a little bit of confidence. They really feel motivated that they are able to do some of these instructions which you give, and they're able to help and support, because they always love to do that. Self-help skills definitely have to be encouraged. Toilet training, you should self-help skills, maybe, as simple as putting that plate in the sink, or bringing some spoons from the kitchen, or bringing some glass from the, their own things. You should just encourage, don't be always at their service. Just try and see whether they are able to start with 1 instruction, then 2 instructions, then 3 instructions, but start off. If you don't start, then it gets more delayed. Parent-teacher partnership is a must if you want to see a complete, a successful child, an independent child. Both the parent and teachers play a very, very important role. There has to be a team effort. Otherwise, the child will really be confused. If there is a gap, the child is definitely going to be confused, and because you will be doing something else and the teacher in the school will be doing something else. So it's always better to be a team and work on the same goals to achieve the goals. And then the child will be sorted always. Assistive technology, that is the need of the hour. You should not restrict them to just reading, writing. Some children do not enjoy writing for a while. So just leave it for a while, and you can introduce them to computer on typing. It's the same thing, right? So we have to introduce assistive technology, allow the child to initiate activities and interactions, right? So give opportunities, for the child to actually speak his mind, what he likes, what he, join in the activities which he wants to. That will give him a lot of confidence, and you will see a leader in him on a later stage. Give small tasks and responsibility, I already spoke about, and give a lot of positive feedback, even if activities are completed with a lot of support, which is so important. Consistent appreciation is the key for any child with Down syndrome. I think for all of us, but especially for them. A lot of appreciation works. So let us all try to give as much positive feedback for the smallest thing which they do. They get really motivated and do much better the next time. Yeah, I think the next slide. Yeah, so this is the course which I was talking about, which I would recommend everybody and, to take up. Sorry, one second. So yeah, so this course is already I mentioned is for the parents, teachers, educators, doctors, therapists, and anybody who is interested in supporting with people with Down syndrome. So as who will be training you? All your questions are answered here. Experienced medical professionals, the best medical experts which we have, we are giving it to you in this course. Well-informed faculties, therapists, and the best part is, you can take this course from anywhere in the world. And it has a wide range of experience in dealing with person with Down syndrome. So these are the aspects, medical aspects you'll be trained on, the speech concerns where, the speech aspect will be taken care of, the early intervention, the homeschooling, live demonstrations on handling different issues with person with Down syndrome. Yes, and challenges faced by them, as I already mentioned. So the benefits are huge. You can take this course, as I mentioned, from anywhere in the world. You get a certificate and you get a specialization qualification, specialized qualification in the area of Down syndrome. And I forgot to mention, this is the only course in the world. We are the first to actually develop this course because we have the medical people involved in this. The other courses are generally academic based, but we are giving a medical, we are covering the medical aspects and bringing in all the medical experts required for people with Down syndrome, so that you get a complete information about Down syndrome. And yeah, so that's my YouTube channel, a small initiative from my end to spread as much awareness and, to raise bars for people with Down syndrome. I keep sharing my strategies in that. So please, it's just very recently I've launched. It's just 3 months, 4 weeks back. So that's my daughter's name, and that is how I chose that name. Happiness is Khushi. That's my contact number. Please contact me whenever you need to. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tejal. That was an amazing session. I am very sure a lot of people, a lot of our listeners would have benefited from the talk that you shared. So, and yeah, I would like to inform all the listeners as well. The medical checklist that Tejal was previously talking about, we'll be sharing the checklist via email with all of you. So don't worry, you'll have access to that checklist. And talking about checklist, if you have attended any of our past webinars, you must be aware that we have come up with various different types of checklists. As for example, if you need a checklist for red flag signs for developmental milestones, or you need an early observation checklist for learning disabilities. So we have come up with these checklists, and the links of which would be shared by our team members in the chat box. If you think any of the parents can benefit from this, please do share these links with them. Apart from that, there is also a parenting style assessment which you can use for parents to determine their parenting style in particular. So do check out those landing pages and share with the people who can benefit from it. So thank you so much, Tejal. That was once again, I would like to compliment you for the very informative session that you have. Our chat box is flooded with a lot of questions. So without waiting any further, I would just get started with the questions.
Sure.
And one of the first ones that I would like to begin with is from Mr. Rakesh Pathak, who is watching us live on our Zoom channel. And he's saying that you did mention about karyotyping in your slides. So, what is it and how does it help children with Down syndrome?
So karyotyping is the report, as I mentioned in my slide. It is a chromosomal abnormality report wherein we give information, wherein the medical team gives you information about the chromosomal abnormality in the child. So that gives a clarity on whether your child has trisomy 21 or mosaic.
Right, right. Hope
I
that
hope that
answers your
answers.
question, Rakesh. Okay, another question is from Ginny. She's one of the registrants for our webinar, and she is asking us that how to help a 2-year-old Down syndrome child and a child with Down syndrome, like Tejal rightly suggested us. So I would like to rephrase that: how to help a 2-year-old child with Down syndrome who's totally non-verbal but has good imitation skills and shared attention.
Oh, great. So she can do a lot of role plays if she's able to imitate. She can do a lot of expressions on her face and tell a lot of stories on her child. You know, how beautiful she is, about the family she can talk about, with a lot of expressions, I would say. Um, yeah, a lot of communication and, and the focus of the child, she has to make sure that the child's focus is on her lips and see how the tongue movement is, so the child learns. Maybe the child needs more input from the parent as to how exactly the mouth has to be used. So I would suggest that she focuses on the mouth part, takes videos of her mouth while she's articulating sounds also, and show her videos to her child as to this is how the basic sounds of the bird, the basic sounds of that age group. She can just record and show it to the child. And also, as I mentioned, the role plays. I think these two will be a great start for that 2-year-old. And a lot of play with the child. Just let the child do a lot of messy play, explore, as I mentioned, and follow the child. Yeah.
That's amazing. Hope that helps you, Jenny. Do play a lot with your child, and yeah, role play and those techniques must help you. Must help you. Okay. So, Mr. Anash Kumar Das wanted to understand from us, Tejal, that if you have some advices or tips for the nutritional management of children with Down syndrome, and also if there are any feeding techniques in particular.
So, there are, as I mentioned, that, because of hypotonia and oromotor issues and sensory issues in the mouth, there will be some chewing issues with our children in the initial years. So there are oromotor intervention programs, just 1 or 2 day programs, which we also give. Our speech therapists also have. So, I would really recommend that she should take up those 1 or 2 days courses and learn exactly how the feeding techniques should be there, right? And as I mentioned about the talk tools, that is also very helpful because they have, different tools which actually help the child to develop develop strength in the mouth, in the tongue, and overall facial muscles. So that is very important. And when you talk about nutritional and the diet, I think it should be area specific. If I am in a north, I'm talking about India. If I am a South Indian, I would prefer dosas and idlis and ragis a lot. But of course, if I'm from somebody from a north side, so uh, parathas and the regular very simple food is what is recommended. We should not, so it has to be really local. We should not be buying fruits which are from abroad, I would suggest. just try to be as natural and local specifically, and do test for some food allergies for your child sometimes, because sometimes our children do have food allergies. So you should be avoiding those foods for our children. And sometimes they are gluten, um, they have gluten intolerance and intolerance. So you should be aware about all those things. So when you see our medical checklist, you will get all the details as to what all tests need to be done at what age. So that will really help you to, actually develop a nutritional program for your child. And I would recommend you to meet a regular dietitian every 6 months for your child. So after taking out these reports. But simple, healthy, homemade food is the best.
Right. Homemade food always wins the game. So yeah, I hope all of dear parents who are listening to us today are feeding their children with homemade food, because according to Tejal, that works the best. Okay, so another participant by the name Preetham wanted to learn more about orthotic intervention. So if you could explain to our listeners over here that what is orthotic intervention and how does it help children with Down syndrome particularly?
So orthotics, I assume, or orthopedic issues is what I think that means. And generally, what we have flat foot. The children with Down syndrome, most of them have flat foot. So SMOs are recommended. So that is also not for all. So I think a proper orthopedic surgeon will be the right person for to answer this, I think.
Okay, okay, sure. Yeah, maybe there was some gap in understanding. So there's another participant by the name Ishita. So she's describing her case. Her child Dhairya is 19 months old, and she's a child with Down syndrome. Uh, I'm sorry, there is a boy. So he's a child with Down syndrome, and he doesn't walk or stand on his own. He throws everything they give to his hands, doesn't hold a glass of water bottle or anything, and he always wants the parent to be there. He doesn't play alone. So, is that a point of concern? And what would be your advice to Ishita to make some changes?
So I would love if the child wants to play with me all the time if the age is 19 months, but because it's too small, so definitely the child wants you and he loves the mother. So that is why he always wants to be around you. So that's a beautiful thing. You should just enjoy this period because it's not going to come back. You will not know after a few years. They just don't want to see our faces. I face that with my 6-year-old right now. So just cherish the childhood. That is the joy of parenting. So apart from that, when you say that he's throwing and he's crying and he's always he's not verbal. Did she mention that?
No, there's not. No, she hasn't. Huh? The child only speaks mum, mum, and ah. Those
Yeah,
are the few words
right.
that the child speaks.
Yeah, so maybe the child is not having that much communication. That is how he's venting out, in the way he's able to communicate because he's not having the vocabulary till now. It's too young, right? 19 months. So please give him some time, give him a lot of input and talk continuously to him, sing a lot of songs and talk about the family and continuously talk about what all is happening around him, and how you are feeling. Don't assume that he's not understanding. He is understanding every bit. So just don't assume that. He's just not able to communicate, and that is how he's venting out in his different ways. So when he's angry, he's throwing, or maybe I would also recommend if he's throwing all the time, do check with a sensory integration expert. If there are sensory concerns, they generally give you sensory programs. If you do that, that definitely, helps in altering the situation. So I would highly recommend, first of all, talk a lot talk a lot with the child, and spend a lot of time with the child, that will itself solve 50% of the issue.
Sure. Uh, Hope that helps you, Ishita. Talk a lot with your child, and hopefully, you'll see the improvement you want to. Okay, so another participant by the name Saroj Kumar wanted to understand from you, Tejal, that how to manage the sexual desires of children with Down syndrome, and if you have any tips in particular for conducting sex education of these children.
Yes. So, what happens is in our society, we generally don't talk about sex at all. So that is why these desires are misinterpreted in our children and are visible in public. So if we educate our children right from early childhood, we can see a lot of difference. Like in my toolkit also, I have a sex educational toolkit, so that is very visual and it's very hands-on, and it has different situations wherein you can actually make the child understand as to which is the right place to actually masturbate, and it is not, there is nothing wrong about it, right? So but you should be clear about the places, the environment, and it is not to be, so you have to be really really clear in your communication when you're talking to the child, right? So this is the only place you're supposed to do masturbate, or you are not allowed to do in front of anybody, so that has to be very, very clearly put. And you should be very confident and comfortable when you're talking. If you yourself are very embarrassed, talking, then the child is also going to get very confused, and you will end up seeing a lot of behaviors in him on a later stage because he or she doesn't know. So if you have to set a right example, you have to communicate to them very clearly. As I mentioned, you can take my toolkit also, or there are a lot of other, on the internet, you can just search sex education tools. You will get a lot of things. You can just take out the printouts and start educating the child with the visuals. If you don't want to talk, yourself, you can show the visuals and talk in terms of that particular child in the photograph. So that will be very, very helpful for him to get sorted, because all our children are visual learners, right? They see and learn faster rather than listening. Listening is a little more difficult. So I would always prefer visual learning.
Right. So, dear listeners, please do remember that sometimes your embarrassment may cause the confusion for the child. I hope everyone listens to this advice and follows what needs to be done. Okay, I have so many more questions to ask from you, Tejal, but since we're running short of time, I'll be picking two last ones. So, one of the important questions that has come from Mark De La Rosa. It is, how do you do your transition planning for adults with Down syndrome? So if you could
Yeah,
answer that for her.
yeah, sure. So as the topic today's was early intervention, right? So if we have followed that very religiously, and after that we have managed the pubertal age also sincerely, then the adulthood is really going to be simpler, because the child's life has been so organized and scheduled, right? It's always been sorted. You've always given a clarity, and definitely there would be anxiety moments, but you've always have been ready with the remedials. So if that has been done, then the adulthood will be much, much better. But if that is not happening, definitely there is a lot of struggle. And so I would suggest you just follow the early intervention and the pubertal handling, attend a lot of workshops, read a lot. That will really benefit the child.
Right. Hope that helps. And Tejal, a lot of attendees who are listening to us live I know that you did cover that in your presentation, but they again wanted to understand if you could list out some of these specific activities, teaching techniques, and intervention strategies that could help children with Down syndrome. I think so that would be really helpful for our listeners over here. So if you could do that for us.
Yes, as I said, most of our children work great in a schedule when they are given a routine. So if we have a visual scheduler from day one, as to what all is happening throughout the day, what all the child is doing, so if we can create that, I also have it in my educational tool, but otherwise you can search on the internet also. You will get different schedulers and the activities which your child does throughout the day. For example, as basic as just getting up in the morning, right? So, and just a picture of a sun. So what happens? So how does he relate to the morning? That is the sun. He sees the sun rising. So it's morning. And then we can have a picture stuck by him that, okay, confirming that is understood, that is morning. He picks up the picture and puts there. Similarly, for brushing time, you have a picture and ask the child after brushing that you can put the picture now that you've finished the activity. So that ways we can have all the activities, pictures in the scheduler, and ask the child to put it back once he finishes that activity, so that he learns so many concepts in that, right? He learns the morning concept, he learns the the concept of completion of an activity, right? When he's finishing, so he just puts the card and he comes back, right? So that is, he understands that the task is over. So that is one we can do. Then, as I mentioned about the preparing for the right behavior when the child is going to school, you can prepare the child before the child goes to school. He's ready to go to school. So the child is really and you want the child to be an inclusive environment. But if you've not given the right training at home, then definitely there are going to be a lot of complaints. So I would suggest a lot of good behavior pictures and a lot of good behavior, good habits and bad habits activities should be shown on a regular basis from early childhood, so that once the child is ready to go to the higher grades, he knows the right behavior and he's included very well, right? So I think these are some of them. Do you want me to tell some more? Do we have time?
I hope, yeah, if you could list out some more, that would be great. But I think so you have listed enough. And we would also be sharing the recording of this session with all our listeners. So I'm pretty sure they would be able to draw
Yeah,
some
everything
advantage
is
from
there.
the recording as well.
Yeah, a lot of strategies I've given in this presentation. So if
Yeah.
you go through that, when I'm sure you'll benefit a lot.
Definitely, definitely. So, dear listeners, we will be sharing the slide deck, the recording, along with the checklist that Tejal talked about with all of you via email. So, you will need to log into your Eblity account to be able to access all these resources. I hope all of you are comfortable doing that. In case you're facing any difficulty, please feel free to write to us at support@eblity.com. And like our team members are already sharing the links in the chat box. If you want to access any other checklist, you can do it there. Thank you so much, Tejal. It was a really beautiful session. It was an amazing time talking to you. I myself learned a lot from you. And yeah, and the most important takeaway that I'm taking from here is children with Down syndrome are just like any other typical child, and they just need some more care. But if you treat them right like any other typical child, they we can raise the aspirations of every child, and that in fact is what Eblity is driven by. We want to raise the aspirations of every child with special needs. Thank you so much, Tejal, once again.
Awesome. That's a beautiful note to end, and I'm so glad that that you've gained so much through this session. And definitely, if our children are given right opportunities at right time, that's about it. The children do wonders, absolutely. Because they're totally worth it.
Right, of course, every child deserves every opportunity. Yeah, the right opportunities should be given to all of them. Thank you so much. That brings us to the end of the session. Dear listeners, you could also watch the recording on our YouTube channel. Please do subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't yet. The recordings of all our past webinars are also available there. Thank you so much, Tejal, for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for